Hello and welcome. It's Friday, the 16th of May. You're tuned in to our 10 a.m. newscast here on ARIRANG TV. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines. The head of the shadowy family network that operated the sunken Sewol-ho ferry is due to report to prosecutors at this hour. The captain and 3 senior crew members of the vessel have been indicted for homicide out of willful negligence. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe calls for a review of the way Japan interprets its pacifist constitution in a move likely to raise tension throughout Northeast Asia. Korea says Japan should dispel doubts and concerns shared by its neighbors. Plus, trade unions in Turkey hold a one-day strike in protest at the country's worst mine disaster as rescuers continue pulling bodies from the accident site. It was at about this exact time 1 month ago that we started hearing reports that the Sewol-ho ferry was capsizing off Korea's southwestern coast. Fast forward a month, and with hundreds dead and 20 still missing, investigators are zeroing in on who should be held responsible for the disaster. Prosecutors are looking into the mysterious de facto owner of the ferry, Yoo Byung-eun, and his family. Yoo was summoned to appear in court right now at 10 a.m. this morning, but has he shown up? Let's go to our Connie Lee, who's standing by the Incheon District Prosecutor's office. Connie.
Good morning, Mark. Well, Yoo Byung-eun has been summoned to appear here at the prosecutor's office by 10 this morning, and right now it's a little after 10. No sign of Yoo as of yet, and if he fails to show up today, he could face arrest. Now you can see all around me and behind me there are many cameras from local TV news stations waiting for Mr. Yoo to arrive. Now, Mr. Yoo, the de facto owner of the ferry operator, has not shown face since the Sewol-ho sinking, and if he does show up today, it would mark his first appearance since the disaster. And if he also shows up, he will be the first in his family to actually appear for questioning. Now, Mr. Yoo's 2 sons and a daughter have been summoned earlier this week, but all of them were no-shows, basically putting the authorities on a hunt for them. Now, none of the family members have been charged yet in relation to the ferry accident, but a closer look into their complicated web of businesses is raising suspicions that they very well may be responsible for the deadly disaster.
They are the elusive Yoos, and investigators are after them. First, meet the father, 73-year-old business tycoon Yoo Byung-eun. He's been called the millionaire with no face by local media, as he rarely appears in public. Yoo is seen as a de facto owner of the ferry's operator, Incheon Marine Company, although investigators say he received 15 million won, or about $14,000 a month, from the company for the past 10 years. Mr. Yoo has denied any involvement. However, it's believed he controlled the company through his 2 sons. Yoo Dae-gyun and Yoo Hyuk-ki actually control Incheon Marine Company through a web of affiliates and various cross-share holdings. With all that they have, the family faces a slew of accusations, including embezzlement, tax evasion, and raising illegal offshore funds. Prosecutors believe these allegations tie into the careless operation of the ferry company, which eventually led to the deaths of more than 300 people. Investigators want to know if the Yoo family knew about the sloppy management of the ferry. The probe into their businesses and assets will have bearing on due compensation for victims and surviving families affected by the ferry disaster.
But getting hold of this family has been quite difficult so far. The eldest son, Yoo Dae-gyun, has been on the most wanted list since Wednesday, with authorities ordered to arrest him on site. Now, he was summoned earlier this week for questioning, but he didn't show up, so prosecutors actually raided his home, but he hasn't been found there either. Prosecutors now say they will reward the police officer that finds and arrests him. The whereabouts of the younger son, Hyuk-ki, is also unknown. He currently resides in the U.S. court, but has ignored summons to return to Korea. Local authorities are now working with the FBI to extradite him, and officials say the sister, who has also been summoned for questioning, currently resides in France. So authorities are working to also get her back to Korea. Mark?
Well, Connie, still no sign of Yoo Byung-eun. They're appearing at prosecutors. Looks like it's going to be a no-show. But in the meantime, though, we have the captain of the ferry and 3 senior crew members. They are being charged with homicide. What's the latest on that?
Right, so yesterday afternoon, prosecutors indicted the captain of the ferry and 3 other crew members of homicide out of willful negligence. Now, 11 other crew members were also indicted, but on charges of just negligence. Now, no trial date has been set yet, but the strongest punishment for the murder charges is a death penalty. However, that doesn't seem very likely, Mark, because there hasn't been an execution in Korea since 1997. Prosecutors also have to prove that the actions of the captain and 3 of his crew members were in fact murderous and directly led to the deaths of more than 300 people on the Sewol-ho ferry. Reporting live from the Incheon District Prosecutor's Office, this has been Connie Lee.
Thank you to Connie there. We'll be connecting to her again at noon Korea time. Now, turning to Japan's push for a major reinterpretation of the country's pacifist constitution. This could pave the way for its military to fight overseas. The move, which was announced on Thursday, is likely to raise tensions in Northeast Asia. The US government, however, says it supports and welcomes Japan's internal debate on the matter. Shin Se-min reports.
The United States has backed Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's push for expanding the Japanese military's international presence by reinterpreting of his country's pacifist constitution. The State Department said on Thursday that U.S. welcomes Japan's internal debate on what the Constitution grants and whether to allow the right to collective self-defense. Washington, which wants Japan to carry the burden of its own defense, stressed that the decision is up to Japan's government and the Japanese people. If Japan does reinterpret the Constitution to remove the restrictions, it'll enable its military force to defend other countries in case of any attack. Abe's military push has divided opinion in Japan. Well over 2,000 protesters formed a human chain around the Diet building in Tokyo on Thursday to oppose the administration's attempt to scrap Japan's pacifist ideals. People of all ages took part in the rally, including those who experienced World War II under Japan's military government. South Korea's foreign ministry on Thursday urged Japan to use its power for peaceful purposes aimed at maintaining regional security. It also emphasized that Tokyo needs to seek confirmation from Seoul regarding Korean Peninsula issues. The Chinese government criticized the Abe administration for taking negative actions and expressed concerns about the country's true intentions. In an effort to address those concerns, Abe said Thursday that Japan will stick to a peaceful path and will never wage any war. There are doubts Abe's proposal will win the full support of his own ruling coalition, so the Japanese leader will have to build consensus to win cabinet approval. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
Senior diplomats from Korea and Japan held a second round of talks in Tokyo on Thursday on Japan's sexual enslavement of Korean women during World War II, but progress appears to have been very slow. Seoul's foreign ministry says the two sides held an in-depth discussion on ways to resolve the so-called comfort women issue. More than 200,000 women, most of them Korean, were forced to serve as sex slaves to the Japanese military at so-called comfort stations in the early 20th century. Tokyo claims the issue was settled through a 1965 treaty when the two countries normalized their diplomatic ties, but Seoul is demanding an official apology from Japan and legal compensation for the now elderly victims. The next meeting will take place in Seoul in June.
Get connected to Korea and the world. Join us every weekday for the latest developments out of Korea, Asia, and beyond. On air, on your mobile, and online, we lead the way every day. ARIRANG News.
To try and resolve the crisis in Ukraine, the European Union also offers $15 billion. Korea's automakers and the auto industry in general really enjoyed a bumper month in April. Double-digit growth was seen in the production of cars, domestic sales, and also exports overseas. Our Park Ji-won has the details.
Korea's auto industry fared very well last month in all areas: production, domestic sales, and exports. According to figures released by the Trade Ministry Thursday, Korea's auto industry logged double-digit growth across the board in April compared to the same month last year. Vehicle exports in particular hit a record high in April, coming in at over $4.8 billion. Exports of auto parts reached the second highest ever monthly amount at $2.34 billion. Breaking down the figures by automaker, Hyundai Motor and Kia Motors, which shipped nearly 80% of all vehicles last month, posted double-digit growth on year. The popularity of Hyundai's small and mid-sized models, such as Accent and Avante, and the increasing popularity of Kia's new K3 played a big part in the staunch growth. Normalized operations at Hyundai and Kia's assembling factories in Korea also attributed to the on-year growth. Auto sales in Korea saw an over 11% on-year increase in April. More than 147,000 units were sold domestically. Of the total, over 130,000 were Korean cars, and they were mainly mid-sized cars and sports utility vehicles. It marks the first time in 16 months that Korean automakers have sold more than 130,000 units in Korea in a single month. Production was in full swing as well. Over 433,000 cars were manufactured in Korea in April, up more than 12% on year. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
Staying here in Korea, which is home to some of the world's most tech-savvy consumers, and 8 out of 10 people use their smartphones in Korea to do some of their banking. The Bank of Korea says that the number of smartphone banking users stood at over 40 million as of the end of March, up 8.5% from the end of last year. It's been less than 5 years, in fact, since the service was first introduced. The average amount of money moved around daily on smartphones in the first quarter of this year stood at around $1.5 billion. That, however, only makes up about 4.5% of internet banking as a whole, because the service is mainly used for small sum transactions. And in some related news, Korea's top smartphone messaging application, KakaoTalk, will launch a service as early as next month that will allow users to transfer money to each other. Financial sources say KakaoTalk has joined hands with an electronic wallet firm and 15 commercial banks to create Bank Wallet Kakao, which will allow users to send and receive small amounts of money up to around $100 through the messaging app. Market watchers say it will be more convenient for Kakao users to send and get money than going to the bank, for example, or using internet banking or making a phone call for phone banking. Now, although Koreans are known around the world for their heavy use of credit cards, they are relying on fewer cards than they used to before. Data shows the number of credit cards held per person came to 3.9 on average last year. It's the first time since 2007 that that figure has dipped below 4. The Financial Supervisory Service explained this with recent incidents of the massive data leak at credit card firms just earlier this year and an increase in the number of debit cards issued. Total spending on debit cards is expected to top $88 billion this year. Now, an international expo is underway in Korea's southeastern port city of Busan, and it's to license and sell Korean media content around the world. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports on the deals being made.
From TV dramas and documentaries to animations, Asia's largest test market of broadcasting contents opened in Korea's southern port city of Busan on Thursday. The 8th International Busan Contents Market 2014 is being held under the theme of New Contents, New Network. Around 1,200 buyers and sellers registered in advance for the event. They're being joined by some 500 firms from more than 46 countries. Providers of broadcasting contents from Taiwan and Colombia are taking part in the international event for the first time.
For us, I think it's very important because it's growing a lot over the years. So it's not only like we meet with broadcasters from Korea, but we're meeting with broadcasters and producers from all over Asia. So for us, it's great. It's a great opportunity to kind of expand ourselves even more.
But this is about more than just business. Academic seminars on policies for mobile and ultra-high definition TV contents were held. Various experts and specialists shared their views on finding ways for broadcasting contents old and new to thrive in this new digital age. Korea's one and only English broadcasting station, ARIRANG TV, participated in the event, releasing its new program for the year. The 3-day event runs until Saturday. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News, Busan.
It was supposed to be a joyous occasion last year when Korea's #1 national treasure, the Seungnaemun Gate in downtown Seoul, reopened after 5 years of reconstruction work after an awful arson attack. But claims of shoddy work and corruption quickly prompted an investigation by the Board of Audit and Inspection. And on Thursday, officials released their 3-month investigation findings. And it said that the Cultural Heritage Administration rushed through repairs with inadequate preparation and ill-trained staff. Moreover, they revealed that close to $300,000 was embezzled through the use of cheap glue. The auditors recommended that the gate be properly restored to its original form. Time now for a look through our international headlines. For that, we turn to our Eunice Kim standing by at the news centre. So, Eunice, in Turkey, anger against the government is growing by the hour in the aftermath of this deadly mine explosion there, and it's not being helped in the least by some extremely damaging images of a presidential aide.
Hi, Mark. That's right. Local newspapers published these photographs showing the deputy chief of staff to Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan kicking a protester held down by Special Forces police. They reported that the incident was prompted when the protester had kicked a vehicle in Erdogan's convoy on Wednesday. And as you can imagine, these images triggering a firestorm of outrage online and offline. This as protests continue to sweep the nation. Police did use water cannons and tear gas to break up the demonstrations in Istanbul and Izmir. Meanwhile, the search continues for unaccounted miners at the coal mine in Soma, where the death toll has risen to 288 with no additional survivors since the day the explosion and fire took place. And on Thursday, Turkey's President Abdullah Gül visited Soma to call the explosion a, quote, huge disaster, adding the pain was felt by all. An anti-China protest in Vietnam is spreading from the south to the central parts of the country, igniting some of the deadliest altercations between the neighbor states since 1979. A steel mill in Ha Tinh province was raided and torched by hundreds of Vietnamese workers Wednesday, killing at least 20 people believed to be Chinese contractors. Formosa Plastics Group was Taiwan's biggest investor in Vietnam. This as reports of arson and looting persisted in a number of industrial parks and factories in the south. Cambodian police say more than 600 Chinese nationals crossed the Vietnamese border Thursday to take refuge in guest houses and hotels in Phnom Penh. Anti-Beijing protests were sparked after a Chinese oil rig was placed in disputed waters of the South China Sea last week. And a ferry with about 200 on board capsized in waters off of Bangladesh Thursday when a tropical storm caught the boat off guard a couple hours into its journey. Officials say at least 12 bodies have been recovered, including those of women and children, with more feared to be inside the vessel. Some 40 people managed to swim to shore, according to police. A rescue vessel was sent from Dhaka, where the ferry began its journey, as the recovery mission continues. And finally, U.S. automaker General Motors has issued 5 additional recalls Thursday, affecting nearly 3 million vehicles globally. The largest of the 5 affected 2.7 million cars, including the Chevrolet Malibu, Pontiac G6, and Saturn Aura models, being called back on tail lamp concerns. GM is dealing with the aftermath of its grossly belated recall related to faulty ignition switches, which was linked to at least 13 deaths.
And TGI Friday, everyone, as we kick things off with the South Korean national football team who continue to train before the upcoming World Cup in Brazil. And with the team set to face off against Tunisia at the end of the month, they have finalized a final tune-up match in June before the World Cup. And with the team leaving to Miami, Florida for their overseas training before the World Cup, the Taeguk Warriors will face off against the 38th ranked Ghana on June 9th at the Sun Life Stadium in Miami. The final tune-up match will be helpful for both sides, especially Ghana, who are grouped with Germany, Portugal, and the United States in Group G. The 5 times that the two nations have faced off, Korea has won 3 times and lost twice. And now moving over to the South Korean archery team, where the women's recurve team set a new world record in medalling Colombia. With the World Archery World Cup Women's Recurve competition taking place, Chu Yeon-jung scores 679, Lee Taek-young 678, and Chang Hae-jin scores a 675 for a combined 2,032 points, breaking a 10-year-old record which was set by Korea at the 2004 Athens Olympics. Meanwhile, the Korean archery teams continue their dominance as they prepare for the upcoming Asian Games in Incheon. And now moving over to some Thursday night's KBO action, the Hanwha Eagles and the Samsung Lions draw 3-3 after 12 innings of play, with the Kia Tigers hanging on to beat the NC Dinos 6-5, and the Lotte Giants avoid the sweep with a 9-4 win over the LG Twins. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the Tucson Bears looking to sweep the series against the SK Wyverns. Of course, going into the game here, we go over to the 3rd inning. Oh-jae 1 RBI single to right, and it's now 1-0 Tucson Bears. Next batter, Kim Hyun-soo this time, and he singles to the right side. This scores 2, and it's now 3-0 Tucson. Bottom of the 3rd inning, man on third for Cho Dong-hwa grounds out to second base. Kim Gang-min scores, and it's 3-1. 5th inning, Hong Sung-hin, 3 straight days with a home run, make that 4 straight days, and it's now 4-1. Meanwhile, Tucson Bears starting pitcher Yoo Hee-kwan tosses 6 2/3 innings, giving up just 1 run on 3 hits while striking out 5, as the Tucson Bears sweep the series here with a 10-1 win over the SK Wyverns. And now finishing things off, the Korean zombie Chung Chang-sung, who has been rehabbing his injured shoulder after a brutal injury during a championship fight against Jose Aldo last summer, expects to return real soon. According to the Korean zombie himself, he expects his return fight to be set in about a month, as he added that his shoulder is almost fully healed. He also predicted that the upcoming Jose Aldo-Chad Mendes fight can result in a new champion, predicting that Mendes has what it takes to win it. Chung, who is one of the most popular fighters in the UFC, hopes to get another title shot, pending results of his next fight. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great weekend, everyone, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Well, there's really nothing but sunshine across the nation, and it should remain this clear throughout the day. And despite somewhat chilly morning lows, high in Seoul will hike to mid-20s, and Daegu can expect to see top temperatures hovering 30 degrees Celsius. So it's going to be a hot and sunny day today. And as we can see, the UV level will be relatively higher than usual. So don't forget your sunscreen and sunglasses to protect yourself from the sun. And it seems like this summer-like conditions should continue over the weekend with a good amount of sunshine. Now, over in Incheon, the winds and waves will remain calm today, but the currents in the water should remain strong as the spring tide period continues. With that in mind, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. The high in Seoul will rise to 26, while Daegu will peak at 30, and Gwangju and Busan should climb to 27 and 26 respectively. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like down on Jeju and Daejeon will reach 25 and 28 later in the day. Dokdo should see a high of 19, while Mount Keungang tops out at 16. Well, that's all for now, but I'll be back with more updates after noon.
Thank you very much, Jiyeon, for the weather. That's all we have for now, but you can always catch up with what's been happening on our website, arirang.co.kr/news. We'll be back at noon Korea time with another newscast. Until then, goodbye.